Thank you, ladies, for being here tonight. I've been noticing it more and more in these sessions. It's more females than males who seem to be either wanting to endure Zoom calls or have patience for this or care about the topic.
In 2020, there was a very interesting guest article series by a freelance reporter in the New York Times, I think, that examined the difference between men and women and their voting habits. And something that the author really found, taking voting out of it, was more of a women having more of an external facing thought process on issues that they care about, and men having more of an internal thought process on what they care about. Very fascinating article.
So internal facing meaning what?
Like, what is directly going to affect me versus what is going to affect the community? Yeah.
And yet we have more male elected officials than female officials. And maybe that's because they're interested in only what's going to affect them. I said it, you didn't.
And that is not a partisan issue.
Well, anybody happy about the results of the election yesterday? Elise, do you want to tell us why?
Well, because we've been buffaloed by Rich Fitzgerald for a long time, and now I see a glimmer of light there.
And where do you live?
I'm in Forest Hills in Allegheny County. So sorry, yeah, not everybody here is from Pittsburgh. Yeah, so Allegheny County, the Democratic candidate who prevailed is Sarah Innamorato, and she's really very progressive, including on all climate issues. And it is likely that the Democrat usually wins the general, so we're very excited about that.
Thank you for also voting for a CVPA endorsed candidate. So we've been with Sarah and Summer Lee since 2018, and we've been so proud to see the work that they've done and what they've accomplished. It's been wonderful to see. And my National League of Conservation Voters had a meeting with Congresswoman Lee. Still have to get used to saying that. Today in DC, and they just sent me the best picture, and I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. Real climate champs. Yeah. And we just need to keep making sure that more folks keep getting into office to help support some of these things. Where is everybody else from? Victoria?
I'm in Bloomsburg.
Bloomsburg? Ah, I'm down in Center County.
Yeah.
Claire? Or Patricia?
Sorry, just got on after watching the evening news. I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. Oh, and my wonderful colleague Solstice has joined us this evening. We shared this event also with our colleagues, so.
We're waiting for umpteen zillion people to join.
Oh,
How many signed up for it?
oh, looks like Phyllis is reconnecting. Before y'all got on, she said it could, I don't know, 10, 20.
There can be a lot, but yeah, it does depend on the topic. I'm Renica, by the way. My little tag says Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, so I just wanted to introduce myself with my first name.
Phyllis has returned. Is your internet doing okay, Phyllis? Can you hear us? Maybe. I don't want to get started without Phyllis.
It may be one of those click in, but then run off to the washroom types.
Mhm.
I'll get another cup of coffee.
Yes, I am caffeinated after election day, so I desperately wanted a nap today, but no, you are muted, Phyllis. We see you, but you're muted.
Well, that's just a picture of herself.
While we wait for Phyllis to maybe reconnect, I was asking people as they were joining where they were from and randomly picking on people, but you don't have to answer me. Steve, where are you located?
Steve, you're muted.
Oh,
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, okay.
Looks like we are going to get started. It seems that Phyllis does not have access to sound or camera.
Okay. I don't know if you want to give any kind of introduction or if I'm just jumping into it.
I think it might be best for you to just jump in right now because I don't have much prepared, but yeah, it would be wonderful if you could just introduce yourself. Yeah.
There we go. There's the instructions from Phyllis. So first of all, some of you look a little familiar because this is my second or third one of these that Phyllis has asked me to do. So I'm Katie Blume. I'm the political and legislative director at Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. We are the statewide political voice for the environment, which then allows us to not only just elect pro-environment elected officials across the state at multiple levels of office, but also hold them accountable. We do believe in the cycle of accountability, which is educate, elect, and then keep holding accountable. So that is CVPA and what we do. We also have our strategic partners at Penn Future. A lot of folks know Penn Future as well, especially for some of their fabulous legal work. For those of you who have been with us in the Reggie fight, Penn Future is even going to be one of the folks of the legal team defending Reggie in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court this coming Wednesday. So that's pretty exciting. So that's a little bit about our organizations and what we do. And why I always love it when Phyllis asks me to speak, especially because this is a Jewish Earth Alliance and PA IPL conversation, is part of my work and why I do this and why I do kind of social causes altogether for the majority of my life is as a member of the State College Presbyterian Church, we are a certified eco church. So my faith is also important in some of the work that we do. So I always love doing these and I always love being able to make connections that people don't always think of when it comes to personal beliefs and advocating for the environment. So here we are, and how do we advocate? I'm gonna make sure I pull up my notes so I don't forget everything. shut off here. Oh, Phyllis is going to get on by phone. Wonderful. So why do we do advocacy? Why is it important? We know that talking to our elected officials sometimes might feel like we're, talking to a brick wall sometimes. They might have agendas that are more suited for big splashy media stories, but not everyone. And sometimes, especially constituents, all of you, talking directly to your legislators, state senators, state house representatives, even your county or local elected officials about things, actually having people in the district speaking to them about issues that matter to them do really raise that elected officials' awareness. And we can't drive home the importance of this enough. There have been legislators who have reached out to us when through the Reggie campaign, for example, since I just discussed that, who have said, wow, we had X number of constituents reach out to our office on this. We know that it was probably like a form email that some of you may have clicked on from any number of environmental organizations. But it really made an impact because these people actually lived in the district. And there were some representatives, actually, it was one senator very much in particular, who I will keep confidential because we had a confidential conversation about this. It was a difficult vote for them to take, ended up siding with the environment because they just had so much outreach directly from their constituents. And then we even followed up, and a good best practice, and I'll get to some do's and don'ts, was even sending a thank you, right? Like, thank you for your vote. That really means a lot to me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to XYZ, working on this together, talking about this. And even saying thank yous to our legislators can be really, really important, and also keep really building that relationship. And as local advocates like y'all do advocacy with elected officials, there's a really big element of relationship building that is very important, that also can build a level of trust and respect, that it will be more and more likely that your elected official or officials that you're speaking to are willing to listen. And in terms of this particular group, along with our friends, I speak regularly with Reverend Joan out of UU Justice, and also Mitch Hescox out of the Evangelical Environmental Network. They're not a regular partner. They know that there's other beliefs that they have that might not necessarily be in alignment with other faith-based organizations doing environmental work in this state. But in terms of more of the why we do this, and why we do this, especially as people of faith, is really getting into, we know that it's about God's creation, right? No matter the affiliation, and caring for God's creation. And there's so many elected officials who, at least in their campaign materials, I will say this bluntly and honestly, at least in their campaign materials, the majority of elected officials claim some sort of religious affiliation. And there is something there that those of us who might take a faith-based approach to things can use as a connection builder, not leverage. And I want to stay away from the word leverage, like forcing somebody to do somebody because you're playing on their emotions, but as a connection builder. We both believe in caring for God's creation, right? Because that's a pretty universal faith-based perspective, right? So it's really an angle. I'm gonna go with angle, not leverage. It's really an angle for folks to connect with their elected officials, and it might get you more in the door with things to build that relationship. And another really good example I have of this, I have a friend who is a Methodist. He was Methodist. I can't remember what Christian denomination he was, but He's very active also in local politics in his community, and he has a state representative who, let's just say, is not the most progressive on the majority of social issues. I'm going to try to walk my lines here. And ended up about a month ago having a 2-hour coffee with this representative. And although they didn't agree on things at the end of this coffee, the relationship was built. And the benefit of my friend also being a clergy person was, you know, this very, we'll say, very conservative Christian representative actually said, hey, you know, would you pray for me? Would you hold me in prayer? Which my friend was very floored and was shocked, because that connection of faith between the two of them kept the conversation going and kept the door open for further conversation. So that is the why, the where we're coming from a faith-based perspective. Excuse me. And then we get into the how. And I really want to give a shout out to the conservation voters in Penn Future joint field team, frankly, for putting together some amazing things. I don't know how many of you might volunteer with our organizations or have ever participated in what we call ACE meetings, which is where we bring members of the community with us to directly speak to elected officials. But I do want to highlight some things that are really good practices when our field team is out there talking to folks about how to educate. So the purpose of meeting with a legislator, how do we do this? We know that we want to educate the legislator. We know that, as I already talked about, develop relationships. And as I already mentioned, we know that hearing from constituents is very, very powerful. Things that we really do not want to be talking about as much as possible is any kind of party affiliation and things like that. I think even though there's a lot of folks in Harrisburg who know me, and I might be involved locally in politics, formerly also involved statewide in politics, kind of behind the scenes, people know me. But I have never gone into a meeting with an elected official and talked about party. And that's one big thing to avoid. And when we're going in, and you may have multiple issues you want to talk about, we're really focused on climate here. So when you go into a meeting, you really want to hone an agenda before you go in and think about those issues. You want to take a look at, you know, what committees, I'm going to use state legislature here, for example. What committees does the legislator sit on? Are there connections you can build? I was recently speaking with, actually I have another colleague on here who can correct me, a Republican representative in Northeastern Pennsylvania, and they were a former municipal elected official. I'm a municipal elected official. So we were building a relationship off of that shared identity. And it kind of opened the door, but you do want to do a little bit of research on who you're speaking to. And it's okay to make small talk. You do want to stay on task and you want to get through your agenda. One thing you want to do with your agenda is, if they ask a question, you are just regular voters, residents of this district that you might be speaking to folks for, but you really want to make sure that you tell the truth. It's okay to say, I don't know. You have resources through me or Phyllis or some, you know, anyone at multiple environmental organizations that I hope you're connected with, where you can say, hey, I've got a question about this thing, or X legislator asked me a question about this. Okay, thank you, Anna. I see that chat. So you do want to make sure that you're telling the truth, and it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'm happy to connect you with the right resources, and maybe send a follow-up email. Hey, I found this source for what I was talking about. I hope you take a look at it. You also don't don't ever want to argue with people. Sometimes it can be very, very hard to bite your tongue. But that's also where finding that personal connection and building that relationship comes from, is because you're going to learn. And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes people are naturals at it. And it's okay if you're not, is to pivot the conversation if needed so you can get out of a sticky situation. And you also want to understand that elected officials are pretty busy. Meetings, I have never seen an hour-long advocacy meeting. Sometimes it happens, but usually half an hour, sometimes as little as 15 minutes. So you do want to really stick to that agenda. You also want to be a good listener. You also do want to hear them out, even if you don't agree with them. And no matter what, you want to be courteous as possible, no matter how upsetting something might be. And if you are going in with an organization like ours, or maybe another environmental organization, doing a debrief afterwards if something doesn't go right is also very important, because it's a learning experience for everybody, but it's also a way to talk about what it meant. And maybe going back to Reggie, you're doing advocacy around Reggie, and this legislator really goes off about a particular point, and you go, you know, I want to tell a couple people about this because they were very upset by it, but I know it's wrong. And being able to share that information with other people could help others work to help educate that particular elected official. The other thing, and I feel like this is common sense, but it's always good to remind people, we never threaten in any way any elected official with opposition, defeat, I'm not voting for you. It really goes back to that courteous nature that we want to have. And we also don't want to talk about unrelated issues in lobby meetings. That's another good flag. We want to make sure that we set a meeting, when we set those agendas, we're talking about the environment. We're talking about Reggie, or we're talking about community solar, and really try to keep it tight. There might be a couple bills related to Reggie. Some of you might know about the Reggie Investment Act, that you could talk about a couple bills, but try to keep it in a more specific issue-based focus. And kind of one of the last things is, don't believe everything they say. That's a very cynical approach. I don't like saying that, but it's true. If you are a constituent, and this is the nature of the world, and this is the nature of politics at this point, both capital P and lowercase p politics, is, especially next year for state legislative folks, if somebody's in a particularly difficult re-election fight, they're going to say anything to a constituent to try to not lose support. So you always want to be mindful of that. And of course, there's some elected officials that will probably be more than likely than others to do that. But just take what they say as a grain of salt, unless it's absolutely true. If you've asked them 3 times to vote for or against a bill, and they've always done that, I bet you could trust them. And that's a great thing. So that's kind of the do's or don'ts. Let me flip my page to my other notes here, and the best practices. But what I want to do is, if there are 2 people willing to talk, because I spoke at the beginning about who I am, why I love doing these discussions with all of you. But I would be really curious to hear from 2 of you in the interest of time. I'd say everyone, but we'll stick with 2 folks. And if you're comfortable, to share with the group why you want to do this kind of advocacy with some of the beliefs that you have going forward, if anyone is willing to. I'm not going to force anyone to go on the spot, like I was asking people where they were from. Sure, Patricia?
Let me unmute. I've been to Harrisburg before, I think it was with clean water. And I went with a group to speak to an opposing political candidate for whatever it was, and also to Pam DeLisio when she was still there in the House. And it was really interesting to connect and such. I'm not a good speaker. I'm a good listener. I'm very glad to go in with somebody else, let them do all the talking. Participate, smile, all of that. I have a terrible memory of names, dates, places, and things, so I'm not good at talking. But I found it to be very enlightening experience and very supportive of how I believed about something. I didn't say anything, if I remember correctly, they didn't say anything about faith when I was there. So I don't know how that works. I know when I go talk to the pastor in my congregation about really pushing for something, I think it was against fracking or something when that became a big issue originally. And she said, well, we can't do anything in the church because we're so invested in the city financial structure that they would complain too much. So everything at church is non-environmental. So I wouldn't be able to say anything about religious connections. I don't know about the rest of you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes a congregational leader can make all the difference. So does anyone else have a story they'd like to share? If not, that's okay. I have more to talk about. Okay. And seriously, chime in, raise your hand, whatever. We can always come back to you if you think of something that you'd like to share. But I do want to talk about a couple of bills, whether you're going in with an organization, whether you're going in on your own because you have a certain passion about an issue, even just beyond the broad umbrella of climate. There are several bills right now that we are paying very close attention to. I'm going to pull up here because I will get the bill numbers wrong. I wish I had a better immediate recollection of bill numbers with all the bills we have. But we have a community solar bill in the Senate. It's bipartisan. The prime sponsor is a Republican, and it's a community solar bill. It is not a perfect community solar bill, but it's something that we're willing to work with and maybe amend, because we want to do whatever we can, especially when we're thinking about our partners and friends over at the Public Utility Law Center, really working on consumer rates, making sure the utilities don't get too much out of a community solar bill. We're looking at Senate Bill 550. The prime sponsor there is Senator Rosemary Brown. We are also looking at, and this one we absolutely love. We have been big supporters. There's a large coalition around this, is House Bill 137. And this is sponsored by State Rep Liz Fiedler. It is called Solar for Schools. And Representative Fiedler, along with CVPA, Penn Future, Sierra Club, Penn Environment, as well as the building trades and the teachers unions, and even some Republicans have really built a coalition around this. And what it would do is it would help leverage Inflation Reduction Act funding as well. We are hoping to get this in the budget. We'll see if we can get it in the budget and sneak it in there. But what it would do is it would really help schools get solar. We went to an amazing solar tour at the Middleburg in Snyder County solar facility, and almost the entire school system, and they have their elementary and high school, like intermediate school, all together kind of in the same area for this school district. It's a rural school district, and they have this huge field of solar. They have sheep that the 4-H club maintains, keeping the grass underneath it tidy. And it's a learning experience as well. Correct. And so Solar for Schools is a really, really cool bill because it should help leverage funding to get more solar at the schools. I'm trying to think of the name of the school district, the High Spire School District, Steelton High Spire, just south of the city of Harrisburg, also has a solar array, and they're adding electric buses to it and can utilize that to charge buses. So also a cool thing. So we're very, very optimistic about Solar for Schools. So those are kind of two positive bills. The Senate, as per usual, it is not majority pro-environment, does have a whole slew of the same old anti-regulatory bills. Phyllis, you've probably seen these over and over again. Third-party permit review. These are usually in the Pennsylvania environmental scorecard. So that's the bad stuff. But the other thing I want to lift up, especially as faith-based organizations, is Representative Kenyatta, Representative Bullock, and Representative Rabb, all out of the Philadelphia area, have also introduced 3 environmental justice bills. We are reasonably optimistic about these bills as well, and I do want to highlight them very quickly for you. They're kind of a package. So one is permit applications that would take into consideration environmental justice impacts. Another one is the codification of DEP's Environmental Justice Advisory Board. It is not a formalized committee, so they don't have a lot of power, as well as the codification and expansion of DEP's Office of Environmental Justice. These should be reasonably simple lifts. It is making these offices permanent, putting them into statute, which means it's going to be a lot harder to take them away, and making it really more important for justice to be considered. So those are kinds of the bills as well. And Phyllis, I think I have gone like 2 minutes over my allotted time. You said like about 20 minutes, and I think I've done 22. And I don't know if she can hear us.
I can hear you.
Yes.
I have 3 devices on. Someone mutes, I'm talking. So I'd like to share 2 things that I read, 2 stories about why it's important for us as faith people to be talking to our elected officials, particularly when they share the same faith that we do. These are 2 examples that I just thought were just so interesting and so inspirational. And if you don't know what to say, the common message is often we believe that the Bible calls us to be good stewards of God's creation and to care well for everything that God has made. And this is consistent throughout all Holy Scriptures. Pollution and climate impacts disproportionate harm into marginalized community, and this fits into the Bible's many calls for us to care for the poor, to protect those who are vulnerable, and to love our neighbors as we would love ourselves. And I just want to give 2 examples from 2 different faith traditions where when we reached out, of course, these were the leaders, but sometimes you never know what the story will do, that it made a difference. Many faith communities last spring were working really hard to try to get the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, passed, and it wasn't looking really great. Lindsay Garcia, who's the spokesperson for the Young Evangelicals of the Climate Action and Evangelical Environmental Network, that's a Catholic organization, said that his group has been working to emphasize the link between their faith and the ongoing fight to stem climate warming. A year ago, when the reconciliation efforts were stalling, Garcia's organization led a movement of more than 800 Catholics who met with senators and pushed for their legislation. And this was what they said. The focus of their effort was based on the word encounter, which Pope Francis has used a lot, to meet people and to encounter them, to persuade them, to be in fellowship, but not to demand, said Garcia. We ask people to look into their hearts and their faith, and if they do find one, and if they do have faith, then to incorporate that in their decision-making process. And that seemed to go extremely well with Catholic lawmakers, because they really did like that. And the other example that I'd like to share comes from last summer's debate over passing the IRA. And this comes from the senior senator from Maryland, Senator Ben Cardin, who is Jewish. And he noted that the discussion of the Inflation Reduction Act, with all of the money for funding for climate and energy was at stake, coincide with Tisha B'Av, which is a time of Jewish collective mourning and over historic tragedies. The Democrats' comments stemmed from Dalia Rakovitz's, who's a leader in the Jewish group Dayenu, a Jewish call to climate action. She had reached out to Cardin's office over the parallel. She pointed out, according to Jewish tradition, this day of despair is also a day of new hope, and the potential for a rebuilt, reimagined, redeemed world is born. These investments in clean energy and transportation can help us emerge from climate-fueled disasters to be a more hopeful, clean energy for the future. And that's exactly what Senator Cardin quoted in his speech. So he got that from an organization that reached out and said, here's a connection, and talk about that. So you never know when your personal story, your faith story will draw a connection or have an encounter, as the Garcia is saying, or the Pope is saying, to have a connection or an encounter that will resonate with someone in your faith or someone from another faith tradition. We have a unique perspective and we have a unique responsibility and can do so. Thank you. So, other questions or comments?
I just want to reiterate, Elise and Phyllis, your conversation there. Absolutely. The organizations hosting this, my organization, we can all point you in the right direction. If you get a meeting with your legislator and you want to talk about climate, absolutely reach out to PA IPL and JEA. Really, really good resources. And I think Phyllis has my cell phone number, and if she doesn't, she should.
Well, let me expand on that a little. Sometimes the officials that we're dealing with are not legislators. They're like executives or city council members. There's not always pending legislation that's the issue. And I feel like sometimes we're sort of dreaming up things to ask for. And maybe, I mean, they may have much better ideas than we do. So how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, and I think there's two responses to that question. Excuse me. I think the first one is there are resources, lifting up another environmental partner in the Pennsylvania environmental space. We Can Serve PA. They do a lot of land and water work, but they're also the organization that kind of helps to guide environmental advisory councils or commissions in Pennsylvania. Some local municipalities have those, some do not. But what they also have on their website is sort of a small bank of sample resolutions and ordinances that are pro-environment. I will say energy is not kind of their jam. It's really about like land and water kind of conservation, land trust, parks, things like that. Sample tree ordinance, things like that. So they do have those on their website. So if you see something there that might work for your local municipality and you want to talk to your local elected officials about it, that's a place to go look. The other thing, a lot of the environmental organizations throughout Pennsylvania, there are field team folks. We have folks, Anna on this call is here from our crew. But I'm thinking of, you're in the Pittsburgh area, Clean Water Action is out there, Food and Water Watch, 412 Justice, And there's several organizations to connect with that also might have a good handle on some of those localized issues through their more local field organizers as well. So there are some directions to go if you're not sure what to ask. But the other thing, and this goes for any level of elected official, is, and I can't believe I forgot to say this in kind of like what you do in a meeting, how can we support you on pro-environment stuff? Right? So if you have an elected official that is doing a stream bank cleanup, it's a classic elected official environmental event. If you have an elected official doing that, just say, hey, can I promote this for you? Can I call my friends and bring people and support you in this because it's a really good effort? So there's things like that that you can then turn around and also ask of your elected official. And it's okay to say, hey, I think you're doing a good job or bad job, preferably good job. I really want to see what is out there that I can work with you on to do more pro-environment things in Smithville Township. And I think that can be really helpful. And it kind of goes back to that listening piece as well. So hopefully that answers your question. There's kind of two pieces to that. Anyone else?
So IPL Pennsylvania has a few actions that we would like people to take. And we'll be posting them and discussing them.
Yes, I can start off. Hi, everybody. I'm Ranika Weimer. I am the Southwest PA Outreach Coordinator for PA IPL. And I just want to say thank you, Katie, and thank you all for being here. I've got some advocacy updates for you and some links that I'll provide as well. So first, I just want to put on your radar that the EPA has released new standards to lower pollution from existing coal, existing gas, and new gas power plants. So this is a new proposal and a comment period will be open soon. I don't have a link for you yet, but this is notable because it will be the first time that the federal government has limited carbon pollution from existing power plants. And as we all know, limiting pollution from gas and coal-fired power plants is essential for protecting public health. And we will be collecting comments asking the administration to finalize the strongest possible version of these standards. And even though, again, I don't have a link for you right now, that will come soon. And I'm really excited to start advocating for that when that period opens. The next thing that we are doing as PA IPL, we are collecting prayers for the earth right now. So I am going to provide a link to a Google form that you can use. And with this form, there it is. I put it in the chat and will also be provided later. With this form, you can submit a prayer for the earth. And I encourage you to get creative. It can be more factual about the environment, you know, some concrete change you'd like to see in Pennsylvania, or it can be a particular quote or verse that just means a lot to you. People have done both, and I think they're both really awesome. These prayers are going to be collected and, oh, interesting. Looks like you need permission to access the form. That hasn't happened before. So I will make sure that that is corrected, but, and hopefully end up sending out a version that will be accessible to everybody. But the prayers themselves are going to be sent to, and some have been written physically to be dropped off with the Shapiro administration. And I think that's going to be really impactful. That's going to be happening at the end of the month if you'd like to add your voice to that. And once again, I will go back and make sure that everybody has access to that form. The last thing that I wanted to share is that there is currently a comment period open regarding the EPA's newest proposal regarding mercury and air toxics. We're collecting comments asking Biden and the EPA to finalize the strongest possible protections against mercury and air toxics because power plant pollution, like I mentioned before, is hurting our health and really devastating our climate. the update here would strengthen safeguards. And in the chat, I want to provide our comment collection link where you can submit a personalized comment or a pre-written comment to the EPA, as well as the proposed rule. You can read it for yourself. That'll be the second link that I've dropped down there. And that is all that I have for you tonight. Thank you for listening, and yeah, let's continue with our discussion. Thank you. Yes.
So we could have, so I'm a Quaker, we could have our Sunday school children create prayers, right? And in their little beautiful childish handwriting. I mean, I think it could be really powerful. We probably in general need a little more advance notice. But just want to remind people that, I mean, what legislator's heart would not melt upon receiving a collection of hand-colored crayoned prayers?
Yeah, that would be awesome. I know you did say that you need advance notice, but we actually do have a PDF. Oh, thank you. We do have a PDF that you can print out. They are leaves that you can write inside the leaves. And we've had those printed out and used to collect prayers. I think that would be better sent out in a follow-up email, just so that I can, we can be timely with this meeting, but I'll make sure that people have access to that as well.
Thank you.
So, sure, please do so. I need to change to the June meeting. Instead of being the third week, it'll probably be the second week, but I will get back to people on that. I have not decided on the topic yet. I'm happy to hear comments from people or suggestions. But I really want to thank everybody for coming tonight and for offering their insights and their opinions, their questions. Especially want to thank Katie, as she said early on. I've invited her a couple of times because she's always wonderful, right on target, and really speaks to the message and the issues that we want. I think you were our very first speaker, in fact, and that was 2 years ago. So it just shows that there's some longevity and a lot of skill and knowledge base. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating. And IPL will be asking you over the summer if you would be wanting to be part of the team of people who are doing the advocating with meetings, either to our state officials or to our elected national officials. It's much easier when you do it with an organization like IPL or any other organization, whether it's Penn Future, Penn Environment, or any of the others, because they do all the legwork for you. First of all, they arrange the meeting, which is to me the hardest part of it, because just getting that representative or the representative's aide to agree to a time can take weeks. So they've done the behind the scenes work. And generally the organizations produce a very, very detailed script. And all you have to do is say, I'll read paragraph 6. And you read paragraph 6 and it comes off very smoothly. There's always a rehearsal in advance to make sure that everybody knows their parts. You can customize it if you want, or you can read from the script. And I've met with Democrats, I've met with Republicans, I've met with hostile senators, aides. That senator is no longer there, thank goodness. But their representative, their aides are always very polite. They always listen. That's been my understanding. It's not always true in all other states, but we've been lucky in Pennsylvania that generally the people that we elect, they may not agree with us, but they know they want to talk to us and they want to listen to us. So it's really important. These meetings have a great impact. So take the plunge. The first one is the hardest. And after that, it's easy, and do the first one with an organization that's going to do all the work for you. And all you have to do is show up. Sometimes all you have to do is say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I live in so-and-so. And this issue is important to me, because you just tell like a 2-sentence thing about your story. And that's all, but it's really important for you to be there. Any final comments, questions?
Thanks for having me, and thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.